today, a couple of things to do. First, I just wanted to take a look ahead at the chapter that we're starting on next week to, I don't know, whet your appetite for it or let you know kind of what it looks like. So that's one thing we want to do today. I also wanted to have a discussion just about, setting as a group our kind of standards for how we want to interact, for, just stuff about how to make the classroom a comfortable learning environment. And I know you've all had classes before, so there may be things that you like about, some ways that we, conduct classroom and some things you don't. So we'll have a chance to talk about that a little bit. And, I'll pull that together and we can, use that as just a sort of signposts in our discussion game, because there's a lot of discussion in this class, especially when plenty of people attend in person like you're doing, and that's really gratifying to me. So sometimes you just I want to hear your opinions about what makes a good discussion, what makes a respectful, productive class, and that kind of thing. So we'll get to that in a little while, I suppose. So right now, while I have your attention and before I put you to sleep, just drawing your attention to the modules, to Canvas. Everybody got onto Canvas okay? If you're not familiar with it, just talk to me after class. We can run through again how to get you into Canvas and all of that. So as I said, right now in this week, there's not a whole lot that we're doing. We're just getting warmed up and discussing stuff. I put in an extra credit discussion, which, so if you don't do it, you don't lose any points, but if you do it, you can get up to 10 points out of 500, but it's worth as much as any other discussion that we're doing. So this one's about creating our online community. So we have 10 discussions through the semester, like kind of a weekly discussion, which is online. And we talked about, I said about 150 words would be, what I'd be looking for, and replying to somebody after you've posted your 150 words. And I also said it could be less than 150 words if you're, can be concise and insightful in less, that's cool. You don't have to write out exactly 150. So this one was going to follow on, my concern for cultivating a respectful, productive teaching environment. So that, that goes into online as well. And my goodness, I look at my teenage children and how they communicate online, and I'm scared because it's so raw. So, for many people, I think that's fine. And, but maybe in our class, we want to talk, or discuss a little bit about what makes a good online discussion. So that's there for you. And all of these discussions, I throw them out there at the beginning of the week. I improvised it, because I was thinking last night, what can we do? But usually, like from here on in, the discussion for next week will be right there, week 2 discussion, it's already there. So, these are due Sunday night. They appear at the beginning of the week. Sunday nights is when we usually turn them in. Okay, so if you want to participate in that one, extra credit, that's out there. Otherwise, there's not a lot on this module. There's a website which pulls together a lot of different communication theories and so on and so forth. So there's a ton of stuff up there, but it's really an extra to the textbook and to the kind of information that's in the textbook. So I said we'd take a little bit of a look at what's coming up. You don't have your textbook yet, but your homework would be, get a hold of the textbook and read chapter 1 or as much of chapter 1 as you can before class on Tuesday, and keep reading it, for next week so that you've gone over chapter 1 next week. So as you can, I don't actually put up online your homework is this, but you can assume that going into week 2, we're talking about chapter 1. Okay? Sadiq, is there any? No?
He was just asking about the Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it's like
Let's use the gas one.
Yeah, the guest one, and I think the first one is Wi-Fi for all or something. Free. I don't know. We can work it out after. The password. The first time you use the password is like free Wi-Fi for all. I think is the first one. Then after that, it becomes your student thing. I don't know. Anyway, here we go. So just looking ahead to the next chapter or the first chapter of the textbook. And again, well, I'm going to jump over a few of these things that we'll cover next week. We can look at the chapter all together once you have jumped in. But I wanted to get right to a distinction we talked about last class and just talk a little bit more about it and look at a couple of models of communications. So these are real communication theories. In other words, what would you guys say how would you define what a theory is? Yeah, Kira?
Hypothesis.
A hypothesis, yeah, that would be part of it, right? So a hypothesis would be where you say, this is going to happen. That's your hypothesis, and then you test it out, right? And if something comes back and it checks out, then you're onto something with a theory. So yeah, a hypothesis is a big part of a theory. And
you can call me Jay if it makes it easier.
Jay?
Yeah.
Okay, and please, this will help me, but also for everybody, maybe if you could just say your name, so Jay, what are you going to say?
A theory could also be like the methodology for how you go about testing that hypothesis.
Okay.
So like, not just like what you think will happen, but, taking note of what you're doing so you understand how it's happening.
Right. So you're constructing a kind of way of going about something, right? And having a hypothesis is a big part of that. So we're going to create a controlled situation, and then we're going to have a hypothesis about it and check it out, see how it works out, and develop from there. So yeah, it's a methodology, I guess, as part of theory. Yeah, Jacob?
And you have to have evidence.
Evidence, right? So part of doing this kind of experimental protocol we're talking about would be to have evidence. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Christopher. And it's always changing and evolving.
Yes.
So a theory isn't always proven true.
Right. In fact, a lot of times people bring up a theory to shoot it down and look for a better theory. That's a really good point too. Yeah. Science progresses by what they call paradigms, which is that typically scientists in any given field have a set of assumptions and ideas and theories that they've developed. And sometimes the most valuable theories are the ones that kind of blow it all up, and then you got to start again. So science really, although we tend to think of it as like the ultimate knowledge and the solidity of it, in fact, science is always turning itself over. So very cool. Well, in communications, we will talk in the 12th or 13th chapter about actual social scientific research into communications. So that would be research which would have the kinds of methodologies that Jay is talking about, where, for instance, you would put a kid in an observation room and show the kid some television shows, and then monitor the kid's behavior afterwards to see if they mimic the show or something like that. So it's a controlled environment. You have a hypothesis that might be watching television will produce certain kinds of behavior from the subjects that you're looking at. And you could gather evidence, like Jacob was saying. You could film it, you could take notes or whatever, bring in 1,000 kids and do it with each of them and see and calculate the statistics, for sure. So there is that kind of research that's done about communications and electronic communications. The theories today are sort of more overarching models of what's going on in communication. And I'm sure you've seen a couple of them. And really what we're just trying to do with this kind of theory is to model what communication looks like when electronic communication comes in and gets involved, right? And of course, what we're always trying to do is model what's going on with communication, and technology has changed it radically over the years. And we're looking at a slice approximately from 1900 until 2020 or 2019 right now. We're looking at kind of a 120-year segment, and we notice the rise of mass communication, and we could draw a picture about that. So our theories are basically picture drawing today. And then with the development of technology, especially internet with its interactivity, the picture has to change a little bit, okay? But let's take mass communication as our basis, our simple model, because that's how it started off technically, right? So there was the telegraph, which was electronic communication, right? Which was a way of taking Morse coded information and going from one person to one person. So I think I mentioned last week that that person to person, the one-to-one model, where one person's goes in and types out a telegraph message and another person receives it. That is part of electronic communication. Good morning. Actually, it's better for the sound and everything that the door be closed. So thank you for closing that door behind you. All right. So the one-to-one model, which would be calling someone on the phone or that kind of thing, or sending an email to one person, is less interesting to us than the one-to-many model of mass communication. So typically, before electronic means of communication, we had print. So, Gutenberg could print a Bible and it could sell it to people all over the place, the same basic impression of the Bible. People could print broadsheets and newspapers and books. And so from one source of communication, the writer or the publisher, one would then reach many, 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 different audience members or such. So that is the one-to-many type of model of mass communication. And when that became electrified, it was, radio. So again, although this is really interesting, when we look at the history of radio, we'll see that it took them a decade or two to figure out that it wouldn't just be wireless telegraph. It took them a little while to figure out, oh no, we could just send a signal out and hundreds of thousands of people could get our signal. They didn't really think of that as a viable business model to start with. But they caught on. Radio was our first big electronic medium, and then television pretty much was radio with pictures. It was the same networks, the same organization of one source to many consumers or many audience members. So this would be a viable model for that one-to-many mass communication model. So then it says up here, internet, paradigm breaker, right? And so we brought up paradigm about 5 minutes ago. That's the idea that, things in science or in society settle into a pretty stable way of being. We understand what television is. People enter the business. There's all kinds of regulation, and business and law supports television as it is. Then you get the internet, and then everything starts to change. And so today we're really looking at the most generalized pictures that we can draw of communication in that way. So here is another basic model, very very famous one, which I'm going to take this. I'm going to take over this line again, but really you could think of each one of these lines as joining up a sender, I'll put an S there, over to a receiver. So the sender here would be the central source, and the receivers would be all out here. These two scientists, Shannon and Weaver, who actually created this model of communication to help them calculate mathematically how much noise was permissible in a telephone call. But this caught on in the 1950s as a great, just a model that everyone could understand, that there would be a sender, there would be a receiver, and there would be a channel connecting them. So you could see if you tune your radio to, 105.7, or you tune into channel 12 on the television dial or something, you'd have a channel, a sender and a receiver, a message that would, travel between them. And Shannon and Weaver were, as engineers and scientists, interested in, how much noise can we get away with in the system where people will still understand the communication, what's necessary there. But this model now has just become, well, this is a great way of thinking about how communication works. Someone has a message to send, and they send it out, a receiver gets it, and you need a channel, whether it's speaking, or speaking over the radio waves, or seeing through television. This is useful to us. Did you want to say something? Yeah.
Oh, this is the time period before telephone, or soon after this telephone become available?
Well, this is well after telephones had already been available.
To the television era.
Yeah, could you tell us your name?
Michael.
Michael, okay. I'm asking everybody's name, not only for me, but also so that we all get a sense of who each other are, so we can, yeah. So Michael, this would be in the 1950s. The telephone was around the 1870s. And so it was well, advanced. But this is the era of cybernetics. And these guys were working at Bell Labs, so Bell telephones, right? And after the Second World War, there's a huge kind of interest in, basically artificial intelligence, systems that can correct and run themselves. Well, it was cybernetics early on. One of the uses for it was to modify guns on ships, because a ship was going up and down like this, and you were shooting anti-aircraft, and the aircraft was moving in the sky. It was too much for a human operator to kind of deal with on themselves. But they found out that by taking a shot and then having the system adjust for how far it was off, it was the best way of constructing those guns. And so cybernetics brings one more really interesting idea here, which is the idea that, yes, there's a kind of a communication, or something happens between a sender and a receiver, and then you can gather information and send it back to the sender, who can correct. So if this was communication, maybe you could run a communication campaign and send out your flyers or your message or something, and then you could monitor what's going on here with the receiver, and you could get the information back and say, well, last time trying to scare everybody into not smoking, it didn't work, because it seems like people who are smoking, they know that it's bad or it's scary. So what's the other way that we could do that? So what would you call that? What do they call that within this model? Anyone? Feedback. Yeah, thanks, Rick. Yeah, feedback. Whoa. My pens. So that's another real important concept, feedback, for a model like this. If we took radio or television at mass communication as sort of our example, what kind of feedback exists within those systems? Like if a television show, how do the producers get information about what's happening from the receivers? Yeah, Jacob?
Review. Ratings.
Ratings, yes, and absolutely, Rick. And Jacob, you said review? Tell me more.
Like when people review how the commercial or TV
Right.
shows.
Like Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic or any number of sites and stuff like that. That's excellent too. So you're both right. And in a sense, you're speaking to mass media's moment of television. What company famously does the TV ratings?
Nielsen.
Nielsen, right, absolutely. The Nielsen company actually does radio and television ratings now. So that's pardon me, Rick?
It's an internet. They included internet.
Yeah, they are trying anyway, doing their best, but they're not as much of a monopoly in the internet area as they are in radio and TV, where they rule. Although they're always terrified that they'll lose control, But yeah, so there's things like ComScore, and there's some other internet rating services that compete more aggressively on the internet than radio and TV with Nielsen.
Don't worry.
Pardon me?
The big television company will buy them.
It's quite possible. That would really mess with the industry. Yeah. So, we're jumping ahead, of course, but what Michael's saying is, and why would that mess with the industry? Well, it's kind of like the Nielsen rating scores are the basic information source for most of mass media as it continues. And if Nielsen is not right, if Nielsen is, subject to pressure or something like that, then the whole industry's, their baseline is thrown off. The baseline is useful because when you're working in advertising for television or something like that, you're going to say, hey, we're CBS, we're the #1 network, our messages are worth 20% more than NBC, and that's all based on how Nielsen rates you. If it turns out that the ratings are fudged, then the whole system would collapse, right? So the ratings are this source of information, super important. Jacob?
They try to get rid of the competitors, basically kill them off.
Well, they bought them off. Radio used to be rated by a company called Arbitron, and Nielsen eventually bought Arbitron. So, and you'll see that throughout the media. Maybe Michael was talking about companies, one buying another. I can't remember who was last class, but absolutely true. There's an enormous amount of consolidation of one company eats another, And when we get into ownership, you'll see Viacom owns CBS and Simon & Schuster and places or Disney owns ABC, ESPN, all of Disney, and
Marvel too.
Marvel, thank you. Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm. They're soon to start a streaming service.
They own 40 different items.
40 different companies? Okay, yeah. If you're interested in jumping ahead, there's a website called Who Owns What that you just look it up and you'll see, but there's 5 major multinational corporations that own so much of this. And of course, they're all inviting, if you're a CBS show, you're going to have authors who are published by Simon Schuster on to talk about their book, and you're going to plug, this cable company and these cable channels. It's totally integrated. Wow, it's fun to try to figure out the lines of influence. Jacob?
You know the Dolby studio that's downtown on Market?
Mm-hmm.
Do they do stuff like this too?
Stuff like what exactly?
Any electronic media and stuff like that?
I think they're a key technology in things like compression or in audio for movie theaters, their Atmos system and stuff like that. So, but I'm not sure whether, they certainly don't own production companies or things like that, but they're a key kind of technical component.
Do they have internships for?
I don't know, but you should ask after class maybe. Okay, so we're just getting back to this model. This is Shannon Weaver's mathematical model of communication. It can be used by engineers in technical calculation and stuff, but we can also just use it to draw a diagram of sender, receiver, channel, and feedback, and how important that is. And in our case, in mass and electronic media, feedback is often the way that audiences can express and influence what gets broadcast. So if it's through ratings, we get the numbers about who's watching stuff. And through Jacob's methodology, which is increasingly current, there's also this, what they would call engagement now. Are people tweeting about the show as it's on or afterwards? There are companies that are paid simply to monitor that. How much engagement is a show getting? And of course, if you're a producer and your show gets enormous amount of buzz, like the CW, for instance, there's a younger audience who's very heavily integrated online. They're commenting and talking tons in kind of social media back channels about the show. So they may not have huge ratings, but they have a lot of kind of engagement, and that can be measured through social. So what they would love is for the whole industry to say, yeah, ratings, big deal about ratings. What really mounts is the amount of chatter, the amount of tweets and so on about our show. Then they would be more valuable than CBS. So there's, right now there's all manner of people in the business trying to influence how we actually evaluate the success of a show or something. But this is a model, but now we said the internet is a paradigm breaker. This is our last picture, and we're getting towards the end of this little discussion I wanted to start out with this week. But a couple of additional models here. SRAM and Osgood's model of communication. So you can see the picture gets a little bit more complex or cloudy. The first thing that this model, which looks a lot simpler than this one, but this model is just sort of saying, yeah, you know, there is this sender to receiver aspect in technical communication, and that's real important. But they also tried to take account of, okay, if we're talking about human communication, and we look at what's going on with, let's say, a receiver who's watching a TV commercial, okay? It's not exactly like a computer receiving a line of code and going, ding, it told me to show a blue pixel, so I'll show a blue pixel, right? We humans don't work that way, right? When we talk about human meaning, the receiver is embedded in a culture, let's say, and this wasn't part of their model, but they talk about encoding and decoding. So if we're thinking about human communication, you know, if I watch a commercial that was made in France, it's in French. And if I don't understand French, I'm not going to understand it too well, right? So that would be one example of what the culture is all about, you know. If I watch, you know, some memes that my kids are absolutely, you know, from week to week, they know what all these mean. I'm looking at it going, what's that? You know, I have no idea. I'm not part of that culture, right? And so, however, the kids who are sending that around, they are. So they are taking ideas, they are encoding them, they're putting them into audiovisual codes. This, you know, take that funny picture of that guy with that weird face, and so they know what that means. They're sending it down the channel, they're decoding it. So in this model, we're still sort of here with, you know, this idea of exchanging messages, but it's the idea that, yeah, this culture really envelops all of us. And here in the United States, with American culture filled full of celebrities and all kinds of meaningful things, advertising, et cetera, et cetera. So we're all more or less aware of that, knowledgeable about that. And so the communications that we do pulls out of that culture stuff. We encode it, we send it to others. They have to be able to decode it. If you're an old guy, you can't decode that meme that's really meaningful to young people. But you can decode other stuff, you know, your nostalgia for the 1980s or so. You're just trying to get more of that. So any ideas about that?
Well, now they use AI.
Now they use AI
Code.
to encode. I mean, I'm just trying to think in terms of broadcasting. I guess there are, for instance, programs that will encode the sports scores and robotically push those out on websites and stuff. So we are seeing some, you know, I'm sure I'm taking it too literally what you were saying.
I mean, I'm very general.
Yeah, so it's on its way. Anyway, very, very specifically and concretely, I can only think of that for the moment, but it's a dream, of course, of many producers or publishers to not have to employ creative people, but to have it done by a computer. Right, save money, yeah, absolutely. So that could be an interesting thing to look ahead towards. But other thoughts about this aspect of culture, how we have to be a part of culture, and so this model gives us the notion that some people are of a particular culture and other people are not. Have you ever felt either comfortably included in a message or maybe excluded from a message? Kira, well, you're nodding. What do you think?
I mean, like, on Twitter, like, there's, like, Black Twitter, and there's, like, everything else.
Interesting.
There's, like, one community where, like, we all kind of generally talk about the same things, and then there's, like, the rest of Twitter that, like, is talking about, like, Kavanaugh, like, politics.
Cool. Thank you for telling us that. Michael was just saying I can't hear you, so if we can. So Kira, yeah, I know there's this ventilation sound and stuff, and yeah. So do you want to say it all again, or?
Yeah, there's just like on Twitter, like there's like the Black community on Twitter, and it's like known as like Black Twitter, and that's like usually separated from like I guess the rest of Twitter, which talks about other things that's like not involved in the Black community.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like there's a sense of belonging and
Yeah.
there's a sense of what is going on.
Yeah, yeah, and it's probably a different set of topics and
Oh,
different.
definitely.
Yeah. So you know the content of the messaging is different, but and I think it's such a great example because it's kind of like it's I call it a subculture or I'm not sure, but it's not really important what we call it, but we understand that it's coming out of a different set of experiences than the other cultures that are up there in Twitter, and there are, you know, the politically obsessed, and then there'd be the left-wing culture and the right-wing culture, and I mean that makes it such a fascinating channel in a sense because it's like millions of channels. Yeah. So thanks, terrific example. So this model here, which is starting to get like really more complex or something, is trying to account for, well, at least one thing, and we'll probably come back to it another time. You know, are we obsessed with models today? We are in a sense, but this little bit here, which looks, it's a little bit like, okay, each receiver is also passing on information to others. And I think that's another very interesting thing that is highlighted in this model, which is left out of the original, you know, Shannon and Weaver model, which is simply this. Rarely do we sit there in isolation and consume a message. It's, you know, at this point we said, yeah, we have to be part of a culture to really decode and understand what's being said. But another thing that we do is we go and we talk to other people about it, and they talk to other people about it. So that's why there are these little interconnections which actually don't even run from the receivers, but also among each other in the audience. So I think that's another important thing that communication researchers, myself included, when I was in graduate school, were interested not just in, okay, what's the content of the show that people are watching, but also what kind of conditions do they actually experience it in, and what do they do with it afterwards? Because, you know, when I see a good TV show, it's not just, you know, happening when I'm sitting in front of the TV show. I go away, I talk to other people about it, you know, and that is a sharing of meaning, and that's where, you know, very often, you know, the worth of a program, of a television show multiplies. You know, oh yeah, it's me and my friends, we all consume this, we talk about it, we're into it, we're fans, it helps us, you know, bond, and it also, by talking about the show, it's like, oh, what the hell was going on with that last night or something? You elaborate on the meanings, it becomes more meaningful to your life, you know? And so I think that's an important thing to account for as well. Kind of theoretically, if we're drawing pictures, which is what we'd be doing today of what happens with media, you know, there's a good deal of work that happens after you're actually exposed to the, you know, the message. So bringing it all back to the mass communication model of radio and television, from one to many, which is really what continues to interest us. You know, we're not so interested in one person phoning another one or sending an email to another. Our basis is kind of like from one source, communication emanates and many people can take it. But once we get online, we're into now this situation where there are many centers of communication, and there's not this structure of like one TV station sending a signal out to many, many people. There are many interconnected sources of communication which, you know, almost seem to have equal importance. Can you folks think of any current, you know, medium that's out there that looks like this? I mean, obviously it's part of the internet, but where do you go to find kind of like everyone communicating on an equal basis?
Twitter and Facebook and
Facebook.
Okay, so hang on, we got 4 people who want to talk at once. So I do want to get into like what makes a good discussion, but hand raising is pretty important. Okay, and Kira wanted to say something, Rick wanted to say something, and Michael wanted to say something. Well, let's move from Kira to Rick to Michael. Kira, what did you want to say?
I just said Reddit.
Reddit, okay. So there's a lot of people who are basically exchanging information through there. Okay, terrific.
That's
Rick?
what I was gonna say.
Really?
Yeah.
Reddit is so important to this discussion. Okay, I should actually look at it once in a while. And Michael, what would you think?
I'm gonna say WeChat, WeChat.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys familiar with it. It's something I just found out referred by my friend. So we used to check out WeChat, Michael. So what
VChat?
is W for V, you and me.
VW?
You and me, W-E.
W?
E.
Oh, WeChat.
WeChat. Okay. Oh, okay.
So my experience was like something from Asia from China.
Yeah.
And how can that be more advanced than what we have in Google? But
It's kind of like their
until
Facebook.
test it, you can send messages in multiple languages. You can
I have
press on it and say a few words, and voice will be received by the other within seconds. And then you can attach video, audio, and link. What the heck? It's more advanced than what we have here. I mean, as a user experience. So after you have export, it's now always available because they have their own transmitter in US, which is less frequent than the one have in China.
I see.
1,000 we have 500 here.
Okay, we're probably talking servers, right?
Yeah,
Rather than
yeah.
transmitters.
I don't know what they are, I don't know
Yeah.
who they are, but occasionally it's our service. But I did receive a couple times in basement, in the sub-level of bar.
Okay.
Even better than my cell phone.
Right. Well, that's probably, it's probably running through Wi-Fi, but it sounds like what you're talking about is another
Platform.
social media platform, basically.
It's
Yeah.
multiple level of
And so,
message. Yeah.
and everyone in a platform like that, be it
And they have group-
Facebook or WeChat, you're all sort of at a same level in a
They
hierarchy.
have a group chat, so you can leave relay message.
Okay.
Really
This is a
fascinating. Yeah.
good example, I think. I'd love to know more about it. And Jacob?
Like WhatsApp.
Okay, so yeah, again, yes, I don't know an enormous amount about it, but I'd say any of the platforms that gives you the ability to, on an equal level, communicate with other people, would be, much more this type of model. Sadiq?
I had a couple, so like group chat, you can group chat in anything, and then also the Instagram comment section. You can comment, you can also reply to the comments.
Yeah, and that, I would have thought YouTube as well has certain aspects like that too.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. So and then I think each of the platforms, enables a different, very specific different capabilities that we've got in each of the platforms. But these are all good examples of a new kind of model where, the audience member who was typically very passive in mass media, in the internet or digital model becomes very much more active, or at least possibly active. And I think Sadiq's example, or the possibility of a social media platform to be scalable, so that it could operate as almost a one-to-one, in a sense that you're DMing individuals, or you're putting up content which is only of interest or is restricted to just a few people in your family. Yet the same platform, if you've got a page on Facebook or wherever, can actually link up millions of people at the same time. So at this point, the social media platform kind of bridges our one-to-one, which we're not all that interested about in this class. So I probably wouldn't spend my entertainment-oriented hours, looking at group chats or something like that. I would seek out, a new online TV show on Facebook or whatever, which is like amazing. Same platform, different content. Maybe that would be more interesting to us in our class. But, talking over all these models, what we see is like this huge change from already what was revolutionary in its day, electronic mass media, to, kind of an internet digital model, truly paradigm busting, and much harder to model in simple ways, but it's also just really, really useful for us, So yeah, that's just a first set of ideas that I wanted to talk about today. So of course, this is just a part of chapter 1, so get a hold of the textbook. And now you'll have a real good idea about what this section is, which is probably the most complex section of the chapter. But it explores in more detail, the changes that now we basically live in an environment where this is still happening. If you turn on your TV and turn on CBS, that's the model. But if you go online, that's going to be the model. We've got all of that at our disposition. So, pretty cool, if you ask me. Okay, wanted to change gears. Yes? Did I hear someone wanted to?
I was going to say, would you say like the second model creates more noise? I would think so. Because I remember you were saying before with the...
We're using noise metaphorically, and I agree, yeah. In terms of the metaphor as I understand what you're talking about, yeah, definitely. Again, if we were talking about news, you had a paradigm in which you felt you could count on the centralized publisher, CBS or ABC, to have a certain responsibility, and that the news that they would put out there would be, vetted and reliable, versus, in this situation, you're not really sure of the reliability, right? The source becomes so important. So how do you guys actually deal with that?
Just call it fake news.
Call it fake news, right? That obviously that's such a meme in itself because of this whole issue, right? This whole challenge. How do people deal with that?
The source.
The source, yes, Sadiq?
You saying how we deal with the source?
How do you deal with the variable reliability of, let's say, news from that you find on an online platform?
I just look at like replies and comments, and
Okay.
people usually give where they get the information from to tell whether it's true or not, and then
So 2 things I'm hearing already, yeah?
and then I use that information and then check it myself, and then I make my conclusion from there. But
Okay.
It's the internet, so it's like
3 things I'm hearing that's real important. Fenris, you had your hand up? I'm trying to, yeah.
Try to verify from at least 3 multiple sources.
Oh, that's another good way. Okay, at least 3. Okay, I'm happy with 2, but at least 3 is interesting. Okay, and
Also, just being aware of who you're getting the message from, and there's usually, I know when my aunt posts something on Facebook, I know she's probably posting something that's fake. She's not she doesn't really take the time to research anything on her own. So I know that, but then also there are dead giveaways within the message as to whether it's reliable or not.
Yeah.
Especially with things that are false.
Okay, cool. So there's a whole, in fact, I'm developing a course, which I can't give until next fall, but this is really well, there's been, for 25 years, there's been media literacy classes. It's just real interesting now that we're in this situation. But media literacy, I'm hearing out of here personal responsibility to assess the message. Now we can't count on CBS or NBC to vet that information. They're still out there, right? But with the president raging against CNN, which is, basically has the equivalent authority of any other mass media broadcaster, more and more people don't trust them anyway, and they probably never should have put their complete faith in CBS, NBC, ABC, right? Science continually refreshes itself. Well, a good news organization continually fact checks, and if they're honest, they say, yeah, we blew it, we got it wrong. There was no yellow cake in Iraq. We were fooled. We went to war based on fake news. So a real news organization, like a good scientist, is searching for the truth and tearing it up as they go along, but we know that they fail, they fudge. So personal responsibility for the message. We have source checking, absolutely essential, right? Whether it is just a healthy skepticism about what your aunt posts, right? Which is, so you're looking at it kind of like, does this check out? Or as Fenris says, cross-checking, and he had 3. I'd be really interested to know, whether there are other, guidelines or such. I'm just starting to read textbooks for media literacy. That's good if it looks like some incredible thing, like, president caught red-handed, with getting money from Putin or something like that. Cross-check. If it's such big news, it should be written up elsewhere, right? If there's only one place writing about it, it's probably fake, right? Okay, Sadiq also saying, check comments, so on and so forth. So you're looking basically for a context to the news, right? You've got this piece of information, but like, okay, does anyone else talk about it? What do people think about it? What are they saying about it, et cetera? So in healthy skepticism, I probably forget one of those 1, 2, 3 things that I was doing on what you were saying, but we had a lot of good stuff from you. So yeah, it's basically where we're at right now with media literacy, and the waters have been This basically makes it harder, but this made it a lot easier to manipulate and restrict, and like. I did a study when I was in school about politicians, who basically would be so tightly on their message that you just couldn't learn anything about anything except what they wanted to tell you, right? Versus now, you've got everybody digging in everywhere, and it's different. Michael?
Talk about something. Remember just recently about the source being checked on follow through by New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
Forgot the topic. So I will use the same example with ad slogan. Who is willing, courageous to post his news on the U.S. citizen? I mean, you take a chance against Homeland Security or CIA or USA government, right?
Yeah.
It takes really strong backbone of the organization to post something like that.
Uh-huh.
And who own Washington Post, that's all. Like Fox News, Republican, something like that.
Yes.
That's my opinion.
Yes.
Until you know what's the background, where the financial sources, then you know how it may be biased.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or the money, I guess.
Right, right. So source checking. So I guess one way that I could, develop on what Michael just told us is, yes, certainly in the mass media, there was partisan publications. The Hearst papers would, literally, not fake news or whatever, but I mean, very biased sources. And still, at the moment, we know the political leanings of the current, mass media, right? And so, although as a liberal, I think the New York Times and the Washington Post gives us a better chance at getting to the truth than Fox News, there are other people, half the country, maybe half the room here, I'm not sure, who might disagree, right? And say, oh, no, and liberal media, they got it all wrong. It is fake news. The president's right. Yes, I mean, I'm...
We're in California. We are not in Texas. Just kidding.
No, but, I think those stereotypes are of interest. But, if you get out of the big cities, you do get into places where people are very conservative, even in this state. Yeah. So, okay, let's segue into a discussion about discussions and stuff. So in other words, I'm passing out cards here. Just maybe there's an idea or two that comes out of this discussion that you don't necessarily want to say out loud or something, because I don't know, for whatever reason, you might also just write it down, or this is just a way of gathering your thoughts together here too. Down here quickly. Okay. So what I would like to do here is to get your thoughts about what is, the best way to foster a respectful and productive atmosphere in the classroom. And again, I'll tell you, this is my homework from my class that I'm taking about how to be a better teacher. But I'll also tell you that this pen sucks, but also that some of my most challenging moments as a teacher have come through, when the classroom culture kind of breaks down. And whether it's, I won't put names to any of it, but there are moments of great tension between teachers and students, or between fellow students and stuff. And, I realized that probably by talking about it early on in the semester and coming to a kind of a group conclusion about what's the best way to operate and stuff, probably that's going to help that out. It's certainly we won't be high and dry if there ever are moments of tension or something. And I don't say they're going to happen, but I could tell you I vividly remember, even years back when it does happen, because it's so upsetting. Because my whole goal in being a teacher is to encourage people to think more and to learn more and take away good experiences, but can happen that bad experiences happen. So my question, I have a bunch of questions that I could ask here, but first of all, in terms of discussion, because we just had what I think is a great discussion, but what works best when we're discussing, when we got a lot of people who want to weigh in on an issue and so on and so forth? What works best for classroom discussion? Yes?
Raising a hand.
Okay, so raising a hand, for sure, that's a good one. Raising a hand. And I would say again, please say your name before. Christopher.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Yeah, but that's fine. But please keep saying your name, because another thing I think that's real important is that we all get to know each other. So it's not, well, she in the back said that, or he said that, or, yeah. So that's a good one. Yeah, Michael?
Michael, if someone's speaking, let them have the force, let them finish.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay.
And make the mistake sometime too.
Okay, so let speaker finish a thought. Put that up. Jay?
Yeah, Jay. In addition to that, let the speaker be messy with the thought, because they might have like the beginning of an idea, but they might not have fleshed it all the way out.
Okay.
But just having the idea as a part of the discussion could help somebody else think about something else.
Yes. So respect need to organize themselves. Okay. But I think that's part of respect. Basically, it's like, okay, we want to hear, we'll let you figure it out. Yeah. Great. Other ideas? Yeah. Jacob?
Be engaged.
Okay, so you want to say Jacob? Say
Jacob.
Jacob. And be engaged. So could you make that specific?
Like as a group to come together.
Okay. Does that mean, for instance, like when we are having a discussion, to be involved, to listen to what other people say?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody want to develop on that? But I'm for that. Christopher?
Yeah, so I mean, just be an active listener.
Yeah.
So doesn't mean you necessarily need to say anything, but you should be aware of what somebody is saying and
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah. Okay. Rick?
How about being open to alternative views that might not mesh with yours?
Yeah.
Open minds.
Yeah. If I might embellish on that for a sec, but you guys, just raise a hand if you want to. Definitely, we all come from different experiences, different, sometimes different cultures, different countries and such. We bring with us different views, and yeah, it is really good to, like some of the hottest moments I've had in class, which would be the most disturbing, is when two different ideologies clash, and all of a sudden you're not like, no one cares about media anymore or anything that we're trying to learn about. It's just, conservatives versus liberals, or, people being called out for any number of either real or other biases that the other person finds objectionable, and those are, those can happen, but it's like if it monopolizes class time, I don't think it's fair to anybody else. But has anyone else experienced that type of thing? And what did you feel? I'm talking about in a classroom. Do you want to tell us about how it happened, or how it was diffused, or what your feeling about it was? Even if you weren't, and especially if you weren't one of the ideologues battling it out, but rather a poor bystander who had 20 minutes of their class derailed. Any ideas on that? Michael?
I think it should happen, but I think it's good approach for the instructor. Somewhat towards the end, if two parties crashing to each other, if we come to the end and manage to approach to the student, well, what do you guys think of what do you learn out of this incident or this lesson?
Okay.
Could something of good thing can happen from something bad.
Got it. I got it.
You have to look at the positive side and how you move on, and hopefully each of us can learn from it and benefit from it in the future. Not to be like that or not to repeat it.
Well, that's good advice to me as a teacher, definitely. So what you're saying is that
We have to move on, you know.
we have to move on. That but also that it possibly can be a learning moment or whatever that we might learn something from it. That's a very positive spin, but I think that's an important thing that I can learn from. Others, do you remember anything like this happening in other classes or stuff?
No.
You all been lucky. Definitely. However, I personally think that's an important one. Other ideas that lead to a productive classroom discussion and environment. Yeah, Jacob?
Take notes.
Take notes when it comes to studies.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a possibility. Take notes. Or let's put that up here too as a potential part of this. If you're in a classroom and somebody has their computer open and, because some people do have their computers open with very good reason and they're probably taking notes. So let me put that back. If you're in a classroom and someone's on their phone and they're clearly like swiping left or swiping right or something that just doesn't look like it's course involved, does this demotivate you at all?
It's distracting. Huh?
Oh, Sadiq, you got your computer and your phone, so I can't find an example which doesn't seem to single you out.
Yeah. A little bit of both.
Okay, awesome, but it's all course related, I'm sure. Okay, good. But I do have classes over at State with like over 50 people in each class, and there's always the back rows, like they're typing away furiously, and once in a while I go back there and I stand and I look down the row or something like that. And there are some teachers that ban electronic devices, but do you find that demotivating when you're in a class with people who are actually not listening, so therefore not engaged, and sometimes the source of something more interesting is on their phone or on their technology? How do you feel about that? This is not a setup to say, well, you told me no one should use a phone or a laptop. I just want to hear what your feelings are about it. Yeah.
My name's Mike, and I feel like it's not really distracting like to you directly, but say like he's on his computer and he's watching like a funny video or something, like how can you not kind of attract your eyes to the screen?
Right.
Kind of like indirectly.
So it can be distracting. Yeah. Any others? Any other thoughts about it? But thank you, Mike. And good to meet you. And do you need a syllabus? Get it at the end? Yeah.
I'll just pick one up after class.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Another Mike. Yeah.
I think certain group or age group are so into they brought up in this tech world.
Yeah.
Me saw 5 years old in the subway using a cell phone already. It's the parents' fault, I guess. But they're so into it, unlike me or my group. So when they develop that habit, they're not aware of the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not even aware the behavior could be destructive to people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, disturbing to people. So I would suggest for them to, if they have to do it, see the back corner,
Okay.
Just
so
to them.
right. Okay.
And be more aware of their behavior, even they don't think it make a difference to other people. It does.
Okay. Well, thank you for that observation.
Keyboard, even quietly, like I did last night in the class. A couple people stare at me, so I have to do it. So I stop every 10 seconds and do it again. And if they
So you're doing it, but you're being considerate of those around you as well. Yeah.
The room was quiet at the moment, and everyone can hear my typing. So.
Yeah. Okay. But we do understand that some technology is really useful and important to some people too, and that's the way they want to take notes or stuff. Rick?
In the past, I've had a class that the teacher brought up a concept called the parking lot, where it would be like a blank space on the board or like a paper on the side, and when you're going off topic, you kind of say, okay, that's a great discussion, but it's not what we're supposed to be talking about right now. Let's put it in a parking lot, and if we have enough time, we'll go back to it later.
Sweet. That's
so
great. Thank you.
Helpful.
Okay.
Keep us on track, maybe.
Okay. That's a great idea. Okay.
We used to use that. I used to use that. I used to be a corporate trainer, and I used to use that all the time.
Is that right? Yeah.
People on track. Yeah.
Because it really does go off track if you don't have something like that.
Yeah, but that's excellent. 'Cause in the course that I'm taking, I talked about the parking lot for a different use, but that's a great use to just say, it's not irrelevant what you want to talk about, but let's put it over there and see if we have time to get back to it. That's great. Okay, so parking lot, I take that. Thank you. That's a good one. It does like to me. I like to give people time to sort out what they want to say, and I never want people to feel shut down. Like I don't want to hear what they want to say, but sometimes I do have my agenda for what I want to get done, and so it's a kind of a balance. And I think I probably sometimes err on the side of giving too much time to a topic, trying to see if we can integrate it or something. So when you see me kind of like getting uncomfortable or something, it's probably because it's been like a minute and a half or 2 minutes, or this is the 5th time you've spoken in the last 5 minutes. And again, that all has to do with personal feelings and stuff. And there are ways that we try to call on everybody to hear from everybody because everybody's point of view is important. Some people like to talk a lot, some don't. So, just be mindful of that it is in a way respectful just to let the silence be there in case somebody else wants to talk, instead of like filling it completely and everyone's kind of like listening, but maybe they're saying, well, okay, can we hear from someone else? Okay, wait, what do you think? Is that a hand up or no? But what do you think?
I feel like it's been talking about it, and people have been saying that it's been really good to see. But I feel like really never had a class that's really been interrupted or disrupted really that much. So
That's cool.
I like that being part of the class.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah. Sadiq.
I want to say have a mixture of opinions and evidence. I just hate when people argue and they just give opinions and they can't back it up because it's like we care about how you feel, but you have to have reasoning too. That's part of argument or persuasive, essays and that.
Okay, that's an excellent one. It was kind of quiet. I'll just repeat it a little louder. But Sadiq was saying, maybe it's just quieter to my old ears, but opinions and evidence. So again, a lot of discussion, especially online, is fueled by opinion. But in a class like this, it's very important, I think, in school especially, that we have evidence for what we think. Sadiq mentioned, he mentioned research papers or creating an argument on paper, and that's a super important thing that we practice in school. And the other thing is, I wouldn't want people to come to school and leave with a lot of false ideas. They're demonstrably false. That to me, that would be like not what school is for. Right? School is to try to get knowledge out there. But on the other hand, we want to respect other people. We want to respect their points of view and their opinions. So there's another balancing act there, I guess, right? But if you are bringing an opinion to the table, don't take it as I think a personal affront or a slight for somebody to say, but where's that coming from? Do you know if that's really true? Because here in school, this is the place, right? Again, we're not the most scientific of disciplines, far from it, but the basic idea that we're after some kind of truth is, I think, really important. Okay, cool. Can we just rank these as to, so what do you think would be how do I do this? I've never done this before. I'm just trying to get a sense of, do people agree with this or disagree with this? So I would say, does anybody want to say what do they think would be the most? Let's have a vote, okay? How about voting? Okay, Fenris?
Let's do be engaged, active listener, take notes as number 1.
Okay, so this is Fenris, okay?
Let's do raise a hand 2, let speaker finish 3.
Hey, I have an idea, but thank you for this, because why don't you write on your little card that I gave you, what is your number 1, your number 2, your number 3?
Yeah.
Okay, that would be a good takeaway from the class, because at 11:20 we have 3 minutes left. So let's make that your takeaway. I hope
Put down the number so that we know which one is.
Okay, that's a good idea too. Excellent. Let's number them. Man, you guys are making me a better teacher. Okay, 5 and 6. Okay, and what was 7? All right. How's that? And I'm sure. Okay, but if you want to write just a little note or something, that's great too. Superb. And Fenris, I didn't mean to shut you down, but I just realized that instead of voting all out in 3 minutes, it's great if everyone just writes down there a little bit.
Anybody know what number 3 says?
Respect, organize.
Respect.
Respect people who need to organize themselves
Okay, thanks.
as they talk, right? It's like, and 15 seconds, we don't understand you, you're gone.
You said respect people who organize themselves?
Well, this was
Respect in general.
okay. Let's
Respect, yeah.
okay. Let's focus on respect. But it came up in the context of Jay, who was saying, sometimes people need to work out what it is they want to say as they're saying.
Parenthesis.
No, you can just keep it.
Okay, respect. People thinking. Now I'm changing them. So maybe you put number 3 before and we changed it. So we're good. We're good. I think overall this is good. So we have about a minute left. I don't want to make anyone late. Homework. There is an extra credit discussion which picks up the same idea we just did, but for online. And so you can get 10 points, which is what any one of the other discussions we're doing this semester. You can get 10 points for posting and replying to a post on that extra credit assignment in Canvas. And then get the textbook, read chapter 1 as soon as you can.